Buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and welcome back to the Making Miami podcast. Today's guest has worn many hats, working as a therapist, educating future minds at the University of Miami, and then going to work for the Office of the Supervisor of Elections, to now being in charge of running one of our most beloved events here annually in Miami-Dade, the Fair, while also being an author of her newest book, Be For You. So I'm really excited for this conversation. Let's please welcome to the podcast, Miss Claudia Uribe.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here this morning, and have a very insightful conversation. And thank you for my resume, my CV.
No, of course. Listen, I had to give you your dues. Like we were talking with Grant earlier, I really love your career because you've really been everywhere. And besides, your technical professional experience, you've been really civically involved for a long time. You've been involved with Chamber South, the Junior Orange Bowl, the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce, and the South Florida Hispanic Chamber as well, among so many other things. But professionally, like I said, your background isn't in civics. It's in business and in therapy and education. So walk us through a little bit of your personal evolution and how you've gotten to the point you're at today.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, on the educational side, I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. When I finished my doctorate, I obviously, what most normal people would do, if you want to say normal in quotations, they graduate and they go into the field. At the time, I was working for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I was an administrator. So I was in a role that I really enjoyed, which was the education part. So I started doing that. I continued full-time and then, doing part-time on the psychology route, so therapy, teaching classes. So I've always been one to juggle many hats, and that's pretty much, the beginning of my professional and personal career as I started to get more and more involved in the community.
And so you as a young woman, right? Like when, for example, you were studying in university and you were preparing yourself for a professional career, would you say that it was first education or psychology that really called to you? What brought you into those paths?
So the psychology aspect of it, prior to working for the school district, I worked for the Department of Labor, and a lot of the cases that I would have to adjudicate was based on someone disabled because of a mental health, and it was something that really attracted me academically wise. Okay. When I left and I went to go work for the school district, obviously, I feel that education and psychology, they kind of go hand in hand, because at the end of the day, an educator is, working, teaching them, young adults or young kids, and using obviously psychology as part of it. Mm-hmm. And it's what I have seen through the years and where I am today.
Of course. And so you, like I mentioned, are very civically involved now. Was there always a passion for civics? Did that come like from a young age? How did you really want to start moving away, not just from like working in the Department of Education and Labor and those things, but really being a community advocate?
So it started, the more I got involved I've been in Miami-Dade County since I was 9. I grew up in New York. I've always been, a civic, passionate about civic, even though I wasn't so involved at the beginning. But as as my professional career progressed, I basically got more and more involved, and you start, having a passion for it. You start helping out. You start, when you're young, you think that, your mind thinks that you know it all. As you start getting older, you start being more true to yourself, and obviously learning, what you believe in, and staying true to your beliefs and your convictions. So, the more that time has passed, the more, I feel that, I want to help my community. Whether it's philanthropically or obviously, professionally through chambers or on the political side. So anything that I feel that is going to help our community, or help others, that's where my heart is.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen that out of you. I mean, you and I both serve on the Commission for Women. We've had prior conversations. You've talked to me about your students and the way that that you care for them and for their lives, and the way that you interact with them, and not just that, but the community at large, right? Like it's evident through your work how much you care for the community and you just want to make that positive impact. And so, do you think it was that kind of sort of internal drive that led you to later work for the supervisor of elections?
That is correct. So I was very fortunate that I was, part of, her campaign and helping her, become who she is. That was a proud accomplishment. And I want to say that even though I'm involved in political advocacy, I'm not necessarily, consider myself a groupie or someone that, so I like to distinguish the two of them. First of all, I'm very, when it comes to women empowerment and helping women raise through the ranks, I'm 100% behind that. Which is one of the reasons why the Commission for Women is so important to me, being part of that. When we have, a leader in our community, whether it's a mayor or someone who, I think, as we know historically, women have evolved and have come a long way. And I think that we need to continue to elevate. And so, I stand strong in helping other women fulfill their prophecy, empower themselves. And if there's anything that I can do, I rally behind that.
Absolutely. That's why, I think it's such a shame that the Commission for Women is going to be ending soon because of this new state legislation. And it's really unfortunate too, because if you read the legislation, there's this carve out for gender. So really you would think that our board should be able to continue its amazing work. And we've been around. We just celebrated our 50-year anniversary recently, and we brought together community leaders. We give scholarships every year to the Young Women's Preparatory Academy, and this is a school that takes girls from underserved communities and helps them get scholarships. And so many of them end up going to Ivy League schools, and they need the types of scholarships that we provide and the support. I mean, we go and we speak to them all the time. We work in human trafficking and we do all these things. And we've done the Disability Resource Fair, which was one of my initiatives where we brought together over 40 organizations. And I'm not just talking insurance or doctors, but schools, right? Barbers that are willing to cut a disabled person's hair, dentists that will have the patience to take care of a disabled child. And so when you do that, you help mothers. And when you help women and mothers, I believe that you help families and you help communities. And so that's why, I think not just the board, but your work as an individual is also so important. And so, in terms of advocacy, I hope that some of our state legislators might reconsider the way that some of this legislation is being applied, and that leaders like yourself continue the fight to uplift girls, right?
So I really hope that is the case, because there's a reason why this organization has been around for 55 years, because of all the impact that it has done on women and, and young ladies in our community. I think we need to continue the work. We need to continue to empower. Like I said, it's something that I was very honored to be part of that commission for women, thanking obviously Commissioner J.C. Bermudez, who obviously appointed me to that. But there's still so much work to be done. And we see this on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the organizations that I participate, we still need to help our youth You know, we need to raise awareness. We need to educate them. I see this a lot in the classes that I teach at the universities. I see that our young generation is pretty much they need the guidance. They don't really understand the importance of being involved, giving back, volunteering. So all those things, are crucial to the well-being of our community. We just had a perfect example of an unfortunate situation that we're going through with Venezuela, but look how many volunteers came through. And so that our community needs to continue to uplift and help these, like I said, underserved, underprivileged women and young ladies to become, just like you and I, civic leaders, helping our community.
Motivating people to get involved. A lot of people think that these advisory boards, they don't do anything. Our board does a lot. And not just those outreach initiatives that I talked about, but we also do legislative work. Every year we put together the Status of Women report, which collects data on women's health, safety, education, and economics. And then based on that data, we create legislative recommendations for commissioners to actually take action on. And this year's most recent set of recommendations focused on things like procurement, optimizing our procurement system to help women in ways that not just affect business, but that affect their health and that affect things like human trafficking and safety. And so that in using the RFP bidding process for like public projects to incentivize things like perhaps pregnancy centers, the same way that we incentivize a green space, right? And so educating people, and I to your point, right, the youth don't know how to get involved many times, and a lot of times they feel disenchanted with the system and with all of its flaws. But that's why being civically involved is so important. And I think that ties in really well with another one of your roles, which is your most current one now with the Miami-Dade Youth Fair, which also does a lot of civic engagement. I mean, you also have the projects that the kids make every year. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your role with the fair and what goes into planning such a fantastic event every year.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So with the fair, they're actually celebrating 75 years.
Wow.
Next fair in March. So again, it's another institution that has been around for a very long time. And many people do not realize the impact that the fair does with young adults and students, all the way from kindergarten on, to seniors, through not only their exhibition projects that they submit every year, where prices, on different aspects from art to music to, they're writing, robotics, which is incredible to see, the talent that we have out there. Further to that, the fair commits every year over $100,000 in scholarships to obviously our rising, our seniors who these are selected by the peer counselors at the schools. It's not just for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but charters, private schools. So, we put money back into, the future of this young generation that really we need to help them, stay focused. And we have some amazing students with a lot of, talent. It's very promising when you see this, and you're obviously awarding them a scholarship, so they can continue on to, great and future endeavors. So what it goes to, we basically spent the entire year, all the way leading up to fair time, preparing for an event that we have over 500,000 residents that come through the gates. And people don't realize that every penny that goes into the fair, from the food to the concessions to the entrances, is money that we put back into, our youth, our kids, our schools. So it's something that I take much pride. I love the fact that I'm out there in the community representing the fair in our community. I'm also there, sharing, spreading the word. Next week we have the opportunity to participate in the leadership conference with over 400 principals, and it's an exciting collaboration, because at the end of the day, our focus is to empower youth, just the same way we empower women, and we empower through our commission. So I think everything, it correlates, with helping our community at the end of the day become better.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that. I didn't know that the fair had been reinvesting its profits in that way. And so it's great to see not just that it's an institution culturally, because so many of us grew up going to the fair. Like you said, 75 years. How many generations of people haven't been going to the fair and have so many beautiful memories there, and continue to go, right? But that you are an institution because you get to reinvest in our community and help so many of these young children. The reality is that nowadays the cost of living is very high. And no matter where you might go to college in this country, education is very expensive. Right? You have a daughter at the University of Alabama, and she's also going to go to law school, similarly how I'm in law school right now. And so the costs and the struggle is very real for so many families. And so it's great to hear that is being reinvested in that way. And I see, again, your passion for these kids and for the community and for really wanting to empower people. And so you balance this role with your adjunct professor roles, not just at the University of Miami, but at several other local colleges. And there you teach a number of different courses regarding like psychology and things like that. So what has it been like for you to balance these two different roles? And what are you seeing in the classroom now?
So yes, so I by balancing and by being connected to the youth through my teaching, I feel that obviously I stay connected to what ultimately I study, which is psychology. I kind of I'm always tossing between, my professional and my educational, because again, I want to get back and I want to do so much more, and I do that at the fair, but obviously it's not psychology related. Mm-hmm. So I get to use, I guess, my psychology hat at the classroom, not just by teaching these classes, as you mentioned, but I end up being a support for these young adults. I say young adults because they're already at the college and university level. It's amazing the struggles that a lot of our youth go through. For example, I usually teach classes of Introduction to Psychology, Human Growth and Development. So those are like your intro classes where everybody, regardless if you're studying psychology or not, everybody has to take those classes. So I get, a broad range of students. And in my class, I make them do, a reflection paper. And they do. Ask you about that. Yes, and they go out into the community and they visit. Part of their assignment is they have to go and either volunteer or go visit some type of agency regarding, whether it's with the elderly, with whatever they feel they're passionate about. And oftentimes these students, when they're presenting, they're picking topics that they identify with. And I see the so many topics that are of concern, because I feel that, okay, what are the schools and the universities doing about it? And I'll give you some examples. Eating disorders. It's huge. I don't know how many students present on that topic. And then they end up sharing that they selected the topic because it's something that they've dealt with. We live in a society where, we're so social media driven. So obviously, these, young adults are basically wanting to keep up with appearances. They want to look like, everyone else. So eating disorder is something that Statistically wise, in Miami-Dade County, there's not that many recorded cases. Therefore, in every class that I teach, and my classes are usually large in nature, from 30 to 40 students, because of the fact that there are prerequisites. I want to say the number is so alarming that the fact that it's not reported, but they're presenting and they're sharing their experiences, is huge. Anxiety, depression, adjusting, to adulthood. It's something that it's such a big topic, and I feel that we're not doing enough, not just at the high school level, but at the college level. Because these are students who are in a crossroads between being, they're not adults yet, but they're not kids anymore. And now they're being faced with, okay, now, and I say this, I have two daughters actually in college. Once they're 18, you're, pretty much, as a parent, you're supposed to step back and let them be the adults. But quite frankly, they're not prepared to be adults. They don't even know firsthand of, what it entails to be an adult. So we have all these college students, for example, at the University of Miami, a lot of them are from other states or internationally. They're coming to a new city, which is very diverse, in nature. Obviously Miami has a reputation of, looks and a certain appearance, and everyone, has to look a certain way. So we're putting all this additional pressure, not just, succeed in school, but look good, be part of a sorority. So there's so many pressures that go on. And I feel that we need to do more as a community for our young adults.
Definitely. And so, you talked a lot about like the anxiety and depression and loneliness. Like, what do you think is one of the biggest psychological challenges facing the youth today? Because this is a constant conversation. The youth are depressed. The youth have anxiety. The youth have this. The youth have that. What's going on? Is there any common factors you're seeing across your students?
Fitting in is number one. Everyone wants to belong to to a group or to something. And when you start and I'm sure that you probably had a little bit of an experience when you started law school. Maybe you knew some people, maybe you didn't. So obviously, a lot of these universities and colleges, fitting is number one, and loneliness is a real. It's real. So not being part of something creates that that loneliness, that anxiety. You're already trying to juggle sometimes work with internships, with school. Some of them don't have the family support. So it's very important that again, as a community, the colleges, that they have more programs or more events that are geared to raise awareness for how to meet other like-minded classmates, how to
get engaged.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's something that I see that, and I hear it in their presentations, and and I'm constantly thanking them, because it takes a lot of guts to stand in front of your peers and basically share your story.
Absolutely.
Again, from depression to anxiety to an eating disorder to being bullied. So there's so many of these topics that like I said, we still need to work on as a community.
Yeah. And I think your new book, which is going to be coming out soon, Be For You, touches on a lot of these topics of like empowerment and identity and feeling stronger about yourself, right? So talk to us a little bit about that and that project. Why did you set out to write this book?
So this book has obviously nothing to do with per se with young adults and, and mental health. It's more geared towards I'm co-writing the book with Patsy Linares. So ironically, her and I met in one of those chamber events, and our stories so much parallel. And with that, I have so many other friends who parallel with the story. And when I say that is, being a single mom, raising, being an empty nester, raising young adults. So, being involved in the community, giving back, philanthropically wise or like civically wiser. Faith is something that it's, very key in this book. So the book is more about empowering one another. When women go through, changes, a divorce, the first thing that as a woman you start, being doubting yourself. So self-esteem becomes a big component there. So loving yourself. A lot of people have lost a touch of faith. Faith is very important, because you start kind of blaming your problems or your challenges on, you start saying, well, I pray, or I'm spiritual, and why are all these things happening to me? Why am I going through so many challenges? So part of the book is basically to the four, what we call the pillar of the 4 R's, which is, I'm sorry, the 4 B's, being beautiful, being bold, being blessed. And what they represent is, you have to love yourself before you can, give anything back. I think that if you're fulfilled, you're more at peace to giving back to your community, giving back to others. But you have to first think of yourself.
Yeah, like when you're on the plane, they tell you first put the oxygen mask on yourself before helping somebody else, because you can't help somebody else if you haven't stabilized yourself completely. And I think the message, although it's geared obviously towards women that are in a particular phase of life, I think that story of empowerment and just really trying to find yourself and overcoming struggle is somewhat universal, right? Like, and the faith component I think is really interesting, and I love that you touched on it on your book, because going through challenges and being a person of faith is probably one of the most difficult things, and the Bible asks us constantly to keep the faith, right? And you see all these figures that went through all these things, and it's difficult. It's practically like really difficult. So, what would you say, right, to a woman that is having that faith challenge?
Well, first of all, you have to, like I said, you have to work on yourself. You have to be at a place in your life that you feel good about yourself. So you have to work on yourself, and with that, part of that is obviously, as you mentioned, bringing faith back to you. I know that sometimes we doubt it because we feel, why are we in this situation? Why is life so hard? So what would I say to someone that is doubting it? Don't give up on it. You don't need to be the most religious. You don't need to be, going to church on Sunday. Be spiritual. You can pray at any time. It doesn't have to be in any particular denomination. You don't have to, carry a Bible around. But you know what? Reflect, manifest, think of all these things on a spiritual level. And I always say, when you're at peace, when you feel good about it, when you have that spirituality, things fall back into place. So that's an important message. So that's why this book is so important. Not just for myself and my partner who's co-writing it, but like I said, in my women networking, I found so many women that have gone through similar situations, and like I said, you need to feel good about yourself. And again, it beautiful doesn't mean aesthetically wise. It's inside of you. You have to feel good. When you feel good, when you're spiritual, when you're bold, meaning, go out there. Like I said, if you believe strongly on something, get involved. Help out. Don't stay kind of like in the corner without. If you feel something passionate about something, go out and how can I help? How can I get involved? Every organization, every entity that I participate or I belong to, they could always use a helping hand. And with that message across, we are all here to have a better community, not just for ourselves, for our kids, for the people that we serve. Like I said, in a lot of the boards, I think that helping one another and is a very empowerment message.
Absolutely. And just that, the being bold and feeling satisfied with yourself in your own skin and the person you are will take you so far. And I love that you touched on the spiritual component, because people tend to confuse faith with an institutional religious connection, when really all you need is a spiritual connection with the Lord. You don't, like you said, you don't need to carry around a Bible all the time. You don't need to go to church every Sunday, but pray and have those conversations with Christ and really build that relationship with him. I don't often go to church as much as I should, and yet I feel a very strong connection with the Lord, and I feel that he has blessed me in so many ways, including with the show, and with guests like you, really being able and fortunate to have such beautiful people right on the program. And it's difficult. Life has so many difficult challenges. Like I've shared with you, like my brother was disabled. My brother has a condition that is so rare that, let's put it this way, when my brother was diagnosed, the geneticist said that the likelihood of him having the condition he has in the way he has it was the same as winning the lottery, getting hit by a train and struck by lightning on the same day.
Wow.
And my dad passed some years ago from cancer as well. And life is not easy, but the constant communication with God keeps you going through it, And so, as we wrap up this conversation and I kind of reflect on your career and your journey and now your book, your entire career has centered around helping people become the best version of themselves and uplifting the community to become the best version of itself. Whether as a therapist, a professor, a community leader, or as an author now, if anyone could embrace just one principle from Before You, or a key idea, what would you want that idea to be?
Believe in yourself. I know sometimes, as you mentioned, we've all had challenges. I'm also a breast cancer survivor, so I can semi-relate to some of the things that you went through. I also have a daughter that has a mild disability, so I relate to that as well. But I feel that if there's a message, don't give up hope. Work on yourself. Be at peace. Sometimes we carry a lot of anger because why me? Or why, in your case, my brother, why my dad? You know what? We need to really be at peace with what we do on a day. I know it's sometimes easier said than done, but you need to work on that. We need to raise awareness when where it's needed. When you see somebody struggling, give that helping hand. Don't look the other way. Sometimes someone who's suffering is right in front of us, and just by simply asking, what can I do for you? Is there anything? It goes a long way.
Absolutely.
It goes a long way.
Yeah. Just that idea, right? That core tenet of believing in yourself, because you need summoning the strength pushes you forward, whether you're dealing, like you said, like your daughter has the mild disability and going through illnesses, going through things like what my brother has, McP2 duplication syndrome, or the many challenges that life can present to you, because the possibilities are vast and infinite. Believing in yourself gets you through everything and pushing you through everything, because there is no other option but to go forward. And so I think we all just need to do a lot of that and self-reflection and really summoning our internal strength and being for us, being for you, as the book would say. So on that note, thank you, Claudia, so much for this beautiful conversation and for these reflections. I think this has been a lovely conversation for all of our viewers, and thank all of you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and leave us your thoughts on the video. Thank you.